Is the Paleolithic diet healthy or dangerous? Is it good or bad? Well, stick around and you're going to find out, because that's exactly what we're going to be analyzing in this video. The Paleo diet goes by different names, such as caveman diet or Stone Age diet. It is a nutrition structure that promotes eating like our Paleolithic ancestors used to eat, hence the name. Its principles are very simple. Eat like our Paleolithic ancestors used to eat. Just like all trends, the Paleo diet has supporters and naysayers, as well as pros and cons. So let's take a look at whether or not the Paleo diet is a healthy diet structure and whether or not you should be following it. If you want to follow a Paleo diet, these are the foods that you will be encouraged to consume. Meats, preferably grass-fed or even wild game if you have the option. Fish, preferably wild-caught. Eggs, healthy oils, vegetables, nuts and seeds, and fruits. All of these foods are considered to be part of an average diet of a human that lived in the Paleolithic era because they were all available. The foods that you will be encouraged to avoid in a Paleo diet are grains, legumes, sugar, salt, soft drinks, dairy, margarine, and generally any processed food. Now let's talk a little bit about the philosophy of the Paleo diet. It's estimated, at least according to Wikipedia, that the first primates evolved around 85 million years ago, and that the first early humans evolved from them approximately 4 to 7.5 million years ago. Now, although we don't know exactly when agricultural life started, it was definitely much later on, probably somewhere around 10 to 20,000 years ago. Advocates of the Paleo diet use this as sort of their core view, that such a relatively short period of time wouldn't be enough for humans to fully adapt or evolve to their new eating patterns. And as such, modern day eating may in fact be unhealthy and unsuited for humans. Now, there are a lot of things that need to be discussed here. First of all, understand that it's very easy for anyone to make these sorts of claims. For example, it's very easy for me to just sit here and tell you that 10,000 years just isn't enough time for humans to fully adapt to their new eating patterns, or 10,000 years is ample enough time for humans to adapt. But the problem is, where's the proof? I can definitely see the point that the supporters of the Paleo diet are trying to make, but without proof, these are just speculations, which is why it's really important to actually take a look at what the research has to say, which we will do later on. Now, Paleo diet advocates point out that many people have intolerances or at least experience some sort of discomfort when consuming, modern day foods such as milk and legumes. And this is actually a valid point. A ton of people are lactose intolerant, some people are gluten intolerant, and many people experience bloating or discomfort when consuming legumes. Some people think that the fact that so many people experience discomfort when consuming modern day foods serves to prove that humans haven't fully adapted to them yet. Now, personally, I have 3 problems with these sorts of claims. The first is that the origins of allergies, intolerances, and the sort are very complicated and aren't as easy to ascertain as, oh, it's because humans haven't been eating that particular food for very long. Yes, this could be a factor, but it could also be due to genetic mutations of the individual. Also keep in mind that many people are allergic to nuts and certain types of fruits, both of which are staples in the Paleo diet, and were definitely consumed since ancient times. So obviously there are a lot more factors to play when it comes to allergies and intolerances, apart from how long have humans been consuming this specific food. My second problem is that if we always went by that frame of thought, then we may never have evolved to consume cooked meat or hell, even some species of fruits, because they weren't always readily available. Now, it's not exactly known when humans first discovered fire, but the earliest estimation that I found is around 1.5 million years ago. Now remember, it's estimated that humans evolved from primates approximately 4 to 7.5 million years ago. This could potentially mean that early humans would go for millions of years before actually discovering fire and eating cooked meats. Now, our ancestors that first discovered fire were probably not fully equipped with digesting cooked meats or cooked foods in general. Just like we may not be fully equipped to digest, boiled legumes or grains. Since keep in mind that up to that point, they've spent millions of years eating only raw meats. However, they did evolve into a point when they were fully equipped with digesting cooked meats. And that's why we modern humans are able to fully digest cooked meats as well. My point is that just because there are foods that we humans as a whole species haven't fully adapted to consuming them yet, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be consuming them or that they are necessarily bad for us. My third issue is this. First of all, I do believe that people that experience some sort of discomfort when consuming a specific type of food shouldn't be consuming it. There's no point in being forced to consume a food that you yourself cannot properly digest or handle. That said, just because there are certain groups of people that can't properly digest certain types of foods, doesn't mean that those foods should be avoided by the rest of the population. For example, if I was allergic to oranges, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be consuming oranges because I'm allergic to them. If you've been drinking milk for 20 years without any problems whatsoever, you wouldn't suddenly stop drinking milk because a lot of people are lactose intolerant. They are physically not able to properly digest the lactose in milk. You are not. I hope this doesn't look like I'm trying to disprove or crap down on the philosophy of the paleo diet, because that's not what I'm trying to do at all. What I'm trying to do is get you to have a spherical approach to the whole subject matter and to get you to view both the valid points of these theories, but also some of the holes. In any case, let's get down to analyzing the actual foods now. First of all, meats. Now, a true paleo diet wouldn't actually consist of any meat imaginable. Remember that back in the good old days of our Paleolithic ancestors, they didn't actually have access to domesticated animals or farm animals. In reality, the type of meat that they were probably consuming was wild game such as, hares, deer, birds. I don't know which birds they ate in the Paleolithic days. But you get the point. It's not like they had farms to, raise chicken and cows and all that stuff. That said, a true paleo diet is just so impractical to follow these days that I'm mostly going to be focusing on a modified paleo diet, keeping the same types of foods or the same structure, I guess, but replacing the foods that are completely practical with something that's much more suited for modern humans, aka the modified paleo diet. So, meats: chicken, pork, lamb, beef, duck. Good choices for any diet if you gravitate towards the leaner portions and cuts. Now, the paleo diet itself doesn't necessarily force you to consume the more leaner options or the more leaner cuts, but if you are a little bit health conscious, you are probably going to want to gravitate towards them. Now, something that is actually advocated in the paleo diet is grass-fed meat, which would be great if you could afford it, because there are studies that support that grass-fed meat is a healthier option than non-grass-fed meat. Fish, great options. I think fish are awesome and should be a part of any healthy, balanced diet. Fruits and vegetables, excellent choices. I think no explanation is necessary. Nuts and seeds, again, excellent choices, and a little bit underrated and underappreciated in my opinion, especially seeds. Eggs, great options. I really love eggs and I think the stigma surrounding them should just go away. That said, it's still important to not overdo it, especially if you have a pre-existing condition or tendency for heart disease. Healthy fats and oils, great if used with moderation. Now, let's talk about the foods that you're going to be avoiding. Generally, any processed food. Now, I do believe that everyone should be leaning towards more natural whole foods. That much is a given. That said, I'm not the type of person that thinks that as soon as a human starts tampering with the food a little bit, it instantly becomes unhealthy and bad for you. I like to look at the processing method that was used as a standalone process and analyze it critically. Not immediately jump to conclusions that the food is instantly unhealthy because it's quote-unquote processed. For example, removing the extra fat from the meat, that I consider good processing. So while I definitely think that promoting whole and unprocessed food is definitely a positive, I'm not the type of person that thinks that all processed foods is the work of the devil. Sugar, generally a good idea if you avoid it or limit it. Again, I'm not the type of person that thinks that sugar is the root of all evil, as some people tend to think. That said, it is empty calories and can promote obesity and some negative health effects such as high triglycerides. Salt. Sure, it's better if you limit it and avoid it as much as you can, but it's not the end of the world if you eat a little bit of salt, especially if your diet is high in potassium. Because in my opinion, the most important factor when it comes to salt isn't actually the standalone amount of sodium that you consume, but it's actually the balance between potassium and sodium. Dairy. Now we're getting into the more controversial stuff that seems to divide the community into two. I eat dairy products. They contribute mostly towards my calcium intake and a little bit towards my protein intake. They are part of my typical diet. And I personally do advocate a modest intake of preferably low-fat dairy products to anyone that can properly digest them. I do understand that certain groups of people can't properly digest dairy products and shouldn't be consuming them. That said, for the people that can digest them properly, that's ample evidence enough for me that they have fully adapted to consuming dairy products and as such are free to consume them in their regular diets. Now, you may be thinking, well, you can have the same argument when it comes to sugar and fried foods. That doesn't mean that people should be consuming them. But the difference between dairy products and sugar and fried foods is that dairy products actually provide a significant nutritional benefit. First of all, obviously, dairy products are a great source of calcium. I know, you can get calcium from other sources apart from dairy products. I do realize that, but that still doesn't mean that dairy products have no place in an average person's diet. The most important thing to realize about a proper nutrition or a balanced nutrition is exactly that it's balanced, that it's a whole. It's not just like, oh, I can get my calcium from almonds, so I'm just gonna quit drinking milk. Yes, you could potentially take your calcium from other sources like nuts, but that still doesn't mean that you shouldn't be consuming dairy products. Just like you could also potentially eat your protein from vegetables. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be consuming, legumes or meats or eggs and the sort. Also, how many almonds do you think you need to eat to get the same amount of calcium that you would from a glass of milk? Look it up. A healthy diet is all about balance and variety. Dairy products are also good sources of vitamin D, protein, and potassium. Now, I'm not going to get into this whole debate of whether or not dairy products are good for you or not, because this video is gonna be 5 hours long. So you do you. I personally choose to consume dairy products because I feel like the benefits far outweigh the potential risks, and that there is not enough evidence to at least convince me personally that eating dairy products is not safe or that it's potentially harmful. Grains, again, controversial topic. Now, I do believe that grains can be replaced with other foods when it comes to their vitamins, their minerals, and their fiber content. But the question is, why would you want to replace them? I do believe that whole grains are a great addition to a balanced diet. They contribute significantly to an increased fiber intake, which has been linked a ton of times with a decreased risk for various health diseases, especially colorectal cancer. Now, yes, it is absolutely possible to consume no grains or whole grains and still have a diet that's high in fiber. It's just going to be significantly harder. Again, controversial topic, do what you prefer. I personally never viewed whole grains as an unhealthy food, and I do appreciate and see the health benefits that they provide. Legumes. Okay, well, I try to keep an open mind with most schools of thought and always try to view things from both angles. With this one, I just plainly disagree. I think that legumes are an excellent food choice and should be a part of every healthy diet. Low in calories, super high in fiber, high in micronutrients and even antioxidants. decent amount of protein, super cheap. Why would you not want to eat legumes? In any case, again, you do what you prefer. This was just my personal general take on the foods that you will be consuming and the foods that you will be avoiding in a paleo diet. Now, another important thing that I want to mention here is that the paleo diet doesn't refer to food quantities or urge you to keep track of your calorie and macronutrient intake. Now, I assume that a lot of people that follow the paleo diet are doing so because they want to lose weight. And as I mentioned in literally every video that I make, weight loss is primarily determined by calorie intake. Now, supporters of the paleo diet don't necessarily advocate counting calories, although you can still definitely do that at your own discretion. But whether you choose to count calories or not, that doesn't change the fact that they are the most important factor when it comes to weight loss. Now, thankfully, the paleo diet does in fact promote weight loss because it advocates the consumption of high fiber, high protein, and lower calorie foods like lean meats and vegetables, and generally the avoidance of more calorie dense foods like bread. That said, it should be noted that the paleo diet also promotes a higher fat intake from healthy oils, which, while definitely great in moderate amounts, can very quickly add up calories and promote weight gain. As such, it should be moderated. Basically, what I'm saying is that just because you're eating healthier options doesn't mean that you can go nuts and eat like crazy. The same principle also applies to health. Okay, so let's also take a look at some of the research, and unfortunately, there's not a ton of it. The first study was a meta-analysis that reviewed 8 studies to check the relationship of the paleo diet with cardiovascular risk factors. The study found that the paleo diet reduced the body weight, BMI, waist circumference, and fat percentage of the individuals, as well as improve their lipidemic profile. So that means lower total cholesterol and LDL, or the bad cholesterol, higher HDL, or the good cholesterol, and lower triglycerides. It also helped lower their blood pressure levels. So in general, great results. That said, the study did mention that by eliminating a few studies, the results were significantly changed. That could potentially mean that a few studies found significantly more positive effects or significantly more extreme positive effects than most of the other studies. Now, does that mean anything? Well, we can't know for sure, so take these findings with a grain of salt. In general though, great findings for the paleo diet. Another study examined the effect of paleo diet with or without exercise on the cardiometabolic health of individuals with type 2 diabetes. 22 individuals were randomized into either a paleo diet group or a paleo diet plus exercise group. The study lasted for 12 weeks. The people that were in the exercise group exercised for 3 hours per week. The weight, BMI, and waist circumference levels were reduced in both groups, although surprisingly, there weren't any significant differences between the two groups. It's surprising because we would expect that the people in the exercise group would have seen greater results. That said, they could have overcompensated by eating more food, or maybe 3 hours of exercise every week just isn't enough to provide significantly more benefits. Blood pressure levels, triglycerides, and fasting glucose and insulin levels were again decreased in both groups, with no significant differences between the groups. The only factors that were actually significantly different between the two groups were heart rate and VO2 max, which are obviously two factors mostly affected by exercise. So in general, again, very positive evidence for the paleo diet. The third and final study is another review that compares the effects of the paleo diet with standard nutritional guidelines on metabolic syndrome. Now, with the term standard nutritional guidelines, we usually mean a structure of diet that resembles the Mediterranean diet, in which grains, preferably whole grains, make up a big majority of the diet and are advocated to be consumed regularly and daily, while things like junk food, sweets, and red meats are advocated to be limited to a weekly or even monthly basis. That said, there are two things that need to be mentioned. Number one, the structure of the Mediterranean diet can be followed without one fully adhering to it. For For example, one can stick to the structure of consuming grains on a daily basis, but stick to refined grains and not whole grains, which obviously wouldn't be the best thing for health. 2. Some of the studies analyzed did allow for the use of refined oils, which obviously wouldn't be the best health conscious option, even though they aren't strictly banned from the Mediterranean diet. Now, this doesn't prove anything in particular, but I thought it worth mentioning. So, the review concluded that the paleo diet induced greater short-term effects when compared to the standard nutritional guidelines, including more decrease in waist circumference, body weight, total cholesterol, triglycerides, blood pressure, fasting glucose, fasting insulin, and also a higher increase in HDL cholesterol. Now, last week I made a video on the potential benefits of intermittent fasting, which I will link somewhere in the video for you guys to check out if you want. In that video, I mentioned that while intermittent fasting does certainly seem to provide many health benefits, it's not clear which of those health benefits derive from intermittent fasting itself and which derive from the weight loss and the decreased calorie intake that intermittent fasting promotes. And the same thing also holds true with the paleo diet. Both intermittent fasting and the paleo diet seem to be pretty good at promoting weight loss for different reasons. Now, I'm not saying this to decrease the paleo diet's credibility. To the contrary, in my eyes, promoting weight loss is a tremendous benefit. That said, there are still studies that need to be made to see which of these benefits are derived from the paleo diet itself or the actual food choices, and which are derived from the decreased calorie intake and weight loss. In any case, let's wrap this video up by highlighting the potential pros and cons of the paleo diet. As for the pros, the paleo diet generally promotes the consumption of healthier options, such as fatty fish and fruits and vegetables. The paleo diet also advocates avoiding unhealthy options such as refined sugars, processed food. The paleo diet can promote weight loss as most of the food choices are not calorie dense. It promotes a diet that is high in protein and fiber and lower in calories. The paleo diet can be very beneficial to people that experience intolerances or are allergic to modern day foods such as milk and grains. The paleo diet is potentially beneficial in controlling glucose and insulin levels. And finally, the health benefits of the paleo diet are supported by several studies. Now, some of the potential cons of the paleo diet. The paleo diet advocates avoiding healthy and potentially important foods such as whole grains and legumes. Some people may experience calcium deficiency and a decreased fiber intake if they are not careful. Now, granted, this can be mitigated by choosing your foods carefully, but it's still a risk. For some people, the paleo diet may actually promote overconsumption of red meat, which has been linked by numerous studies to an increased risk of colorectal cancer. That said, this can also be mitigated by swapping out the red meat, at least some of the times, for other lean proteins such as chicken or fish. A true paleo diet is pretty much impossible or near impossible to follow, and it is very impractical. And lastly, the paleo diet can get a bit expensive, especially if you want to get closer to, the true paleo diet. So, the question, is the paleo diet good or bad? Well, for the most part, I would say that the paleo diet is good. It promotes the consumption of healthy foods and the avoidance of unhealthy ones. Now, would I personally follow the paleo diet? No, because I personally disagree with the avoidance of legumes, dairy, and whole grains. That said, I do find some of the paleo diet's principles to be very solid. And also, I leave my mind open to any possibility. I would definitely not be against someone following the paleo diet, since most of its principles are solid, at least in my opinion. In any case, hope you enjoyed the video and learned something. If you did, like ratings are very much appreciated. Also, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more content just like this. Thank you for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.